Kraft bought Cadbury for 19 billion US dollars in 2010. What did they buy? Did they buy chocolates, the recipes, the candy makers? No, they bought the brands. A compelling brand is essential to differentiate your company from the competition. A thoughtful brand development process helps to identify and optimize the brand positioning. Understanding the importance of the subject, today we have invited an expert in this field to enlighten our members and colleagues. Our panelist today is Mr. Joy Abraham, General Manager of Marketing from Tanmiah Group, CASL. Mr. Abraham is an experienced marketer and a brand consultant. He has previously served as a Group Client Service Director at BBDO, which is one of the most awarded advertising agencies in the world. Mr. Abraham has also served as Account Director in leading advertising firms MNC Saatchi and Leo Burnett. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to our panelist, Mr. Abraham. Mr. Abraham, over to you.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today. It's an amazing opportunity to speak to such an august group. The accountants are always the people you have to go back to get the signatures on every single thing that you do. So it's great to kind of give some of the information that is very pertinent in today's time and age. And as you rightly said, Usman, I mean, brands outlive products. Brands is what today cuts and makes a difference on your balance sheet. It also, in terms of your connection with consumers. Now, this presentation is not an academic paper. It's a slightly lateral view on all what we know about in terms of marketing, branding, so on and so forth. I had to reach out to my ex-colleagues in BBDO, and they've been very kind to, lend me a hand in terms of giving me some of the examples which I've quoted here. And I'm just hoping that this is going to be something interesting for all of you. I got a couple of case studies just to kind of also illustrate in terms of how, the brand story, when it's communicated properly with consumers, can travel over a period of time and across different markets in the globe. And clearly at the end of it, there is a return which is quantifiable. So just to jump in, so this is about some thoughts, which I'm hoping is not very random, but at least kind of gives you a sense of where I'm coming from. This is not a textbook about what you need to do about brand development, but some orthodox and unorthodox thoughts about the whole process. Okay, so one of the things we always have an issue with is one of the questions which is always on the forefront of people's mind is, does our communication work? How does it work? Are we spending money effectively? Are we taking the right media channels? Are we saying the right thing? Are we connecting with the right people? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? Et cetera, et cetera. So what part of our brand business is actually growing or not? So this is a very complex piece, and there are no right answers, wrong answers, et cetera. So everybody thinks that this is a science and it's pretty easy to put the boundaries to it, but this is a lot bigger than that. So let's look at some of the evidence in terms of how brands grow. So I've just kind of tried to put some very simple thoughts around this. So let's assume that we have two levers for growth. Lever one is about this whole thing about increasing loyalty. We have a same set of buyers buying a lot more, many times. The other thought, or the other school of thought, is let's increase penetration. So we get a lot more buyers versus our existing set to buy our products. So if you assume these are the two levers, the difference, if you go to see between big brands and small brands, is not about loyalty. It's about how many people actually you can reach out to and how many people actually buy your product. So let me give you a small example. You're all familiar with Nescafe coffee. So this is a live example from the UK. So Nescafe in the UK is about a 42% market share, as you would notice here. They have a market penetration of 28%. The number of times a consumer buys the product on an average is about 2.3. Brand number two, Kenco, is at 16 market share. Penetration is about half of Nescafe. Purchase is 1.8, also less. But as you go down the brand numbers, you'll find that every single other brand has smaller market share, which is also reflected in the penetration. So typically, data out there tells you that improved market share is also a result of the penetration and the number of times that your consumer actually buys in a larger market. The second piece, which is quite interesting, is that everybody believes that when you have a loyal consumer base, that they are married to you. Unfortunately, loyalty is more like an open marriage. You end up sharing your consumers with other brands. So whether you look at Saudi or you look at other markets, there's always consumers who have a set of products or set of brands in their basket, and they keep switching between them. Now, if you look at a European market where Coke is very strong, 77% of Pepsi consumers are actually also consuming Coke on the side. So here's a piece of research which is quite interesting. So the one on the left is essentially, let's say, uh, actual buyers, or let's say loyal users of brand Adidas, Nike, etc. On the horizontal piece, you have Adidas. So if he is an Adidas brand person, 68% of the occasions he actually buys an Adidas. But he also buys a Nike 14% of the occasions. Reebok is bought about 8% of the occasions, so on and so forth. So if you actually go to see, so there's a certain amount of, let's say, duplication in what they do. They don't necessarily stick to the brand 100%, but they also look at other brands within the portfolio. The other interesting piece of information is, people tend to usually target heavy users. Now, heavy users are important for volume, but they can't be targeted for growth. Now, heavy users are essentially category users. The other thing is they are, sometimes because they are such heavy users of a specific product, they're so locked into it that they are, let's say, not impacted by the message of you as a brand owner, and they might just completely miss it. So, if you look at bread, for example, as a category, so typically heavy category buyers have, they don't necessarily have any significant brand presence. So people who buy about 37 to 43 times are only about 7% of the total category. But 1 time, 2 to 8 times, etc., are the bulk of the consumers within the category. So heavy users are great, but heavy users are not necessarily what adds to your market share. So to kind of summarize this at a global level, uh, success is having lots of light buyers rather than less frequent heavier buyers. So nobody is really 100% uh, of any let's say any. I'm being told that I'm not loud enough, but I hope I am. Anyway, so success is actually having lots of light buyers rather than less frequent heavier buyers, and you need to inevitably share your consumers with other brands. I mean, this is a reality today. So a Pepsi consumer could also have Coke in maybe 1 out of 4 times. So heavy buyers deliver a lot of sales, but they're also likely to be heavy category buyers that versus just loyal ones to a particular brand. So, for example, if you look at the pasta category in Saudi, you've got Goody Pasta, which is a very large brand in the category, but it is not that they don't look at other brands within the category, especially during Ramadan, where there's a fair amount of switching which happens within the category. So some light bulb moments. So brands grow by recruiting more heavy, medium, and light users. So you need to look at people who are actually light and non-buyers because they are the ones you need to convert. So if you got heavy users, fantastic. But how do you grow your pie? You need to grow it by looking at people who don't consider you today or who are fairly light in terms of consumption. So people who don't know your brand too well, who are not devoted to your brand, are the people that you really need to get them to consider your brand and to actually purchase it. So here's another piece of information. This is actually a result of analysis of about 880 case studies globally. This is like done by the IPA, which is essentially an organization which gives out awards for best marketing practices globally. So what they found out is that the percentage of sales which is maximum impacted 62% of the times is essentially because of penetration versus loyalty. The impact on market share, again, is as a result of higher penetration. So the more people you reach out, the more store shelves that you have your product in, the more opportunity for your consumers to see your product actually triggers an opportunity for them to consider your product. Impact on profit, again, pretty much the same. So if you have good penetration, you have better sales, so on and so forth, then obviously it has an impact on profit. So it is not useful to be stuck to a very small base of consumers, but to increase your net and to reach out to a lot more people. Now, some other interesting pieces of information for both marketeers and advertisers is very hard to stop defection. Consumers defect. There's nothing called a hardcore marriage which stays married. Now, this guy is Mr. Figo, who was with Barcelona, and then he defected to Real Madrid, and there was such a huge, noise at that time when he did it, and they called him a traitor, etc., etc. But that's the whole piece, right? I mean, footballers defect, so do consumers. So essentially, this whole piece, penetration is like a leaky bucket. So you need to continue investing to ensure that you keep filling the bucket. You'll always have people leaving. You'll always have consumers dropping out. So you need to continue to work hard to get more people in, to keep your existing consumers with you, and so on and so forth. So there is no point where you can say, okay, that's it, I don't have to do anything more. You need to constantly keep working at it. The second point, which is for both marketeers and advertising, is the fact that it's very hard to create devotion. So, people love to say we need brand advocates and we need engaged communities and we need passionate relationships and we need love for the brands. So all of this is good. I mean, it's not that you don't have passionate brand owners, but a lot of this terminology works amazingly well in a football scenario where people are married to their clubs. But when you go out of it, there are few brands who have the kind of power where you have hardcore advocates. So that's typically what a typical brand is all about. You got some people who love you, you got a lot of people who hate you, and there's a huge bunch of people in the middle who seldom think about you, and they even less seldom buy you. So if you had to grow your business and if you had to grow your brand, these are the lot of people that you need to really get on your side. So at the end of the day, this is a scale game. The more people you can reach out to, the more you can get them to understand what is it that you're all about, they could potentially start considering you. The third piece of information, which is interesting for both marketeers and advertisers, is the fact that it's not easy to provide differentiation. Now, both when I was in advertising and now on the other side of the table, one of the pieces that everybody loves to tout about is, Do we have a USP? Do we have that single reason why consumers want to buy you? Now, if I'm pasta and I'm in the category of pasta, one pasta versus another pasta versus a third pasta, it's very hard to make a differential, right? I mean, pasta is pasta. I mean, they are all the same durum wheat. I mean, 100% durum wheat, hard, not fresh, long life pasta. There's no much difference. The same with chicken. Chicken is a chicken is a chicken is a chicken. I mean, how do you provide a point of difference? This is difficult. It's not easy. How do you ensure that your brand is non-substitutable? How do you ensure that they everybody says that you have a unique reason to exist? Now, this is pretty difficult, and this is where a lot of people fall into the trap of saying, "I have this unique piece of information, which is what is going to create that differential with my consumer." It happens in some cases. It doesn't happen in all. Now, if you had to look at these mind maps which people indulge in, what's inside the mind of a consumer? I mean, if you look at the average homemaker, she's got a lot of important things on her mind: her husband, her kids, her career, her friends, her parents, her cat, or whatever else that she's interested in. And the second, piece which makes them not consider you is this very important thing that people kind of, overlook. The realization, I mean, or let's say research has said there's approximately 3,000 messages that today an average consumer is faced with in a developed market. So imagine, I mean, if you're going through roads, you got the billboards hitting you, you have your phones, you're on social media, you got the ads popping up all the time. There's so much information out there that you really lock into anything. The interesting piece is a lot of consumers just do shopping in a let's say in a complete remote mode. So you unconsciously shop for more than 90% of most of your products. So you have a brand locked off, you just go and buy it. Unless there's a promotion happening where you say, okay, there's an offer. So I have this consideration set of 2 or 3 brands, so I prefer to pick up another one. So competition isn't just for differentiation, but it's about getting people to remember you. So how do I remain salient? How do I ensure that people at least think about me and think about me in a memorable fashion? And that's important. We need to get into the mind of the elephant that's our consumer and stay stuck there. How can we ensure that she remembers us versus just having another piece of information amongst the 3,000 messages she gets and she forgets? So how can we make it, our brands easier for consumers to think about and easier to buy? So brands grow by recruiting light buyers, and they also, get heavy buyers on their side too. So marketing has to work very hard to cultivate not only the light buyers or the heavy buyers, they also have to convert some of the people who are currently not interested in your brand to consider your brand and then decide to pick it up on their next shopping trip. So it's not about just getting people to think of you as different, but it's to get people to think of you at all. So that's the challenge. So on an aisle, you need people to not unconsciously shop, but also give you some attention. So at the end of the day, it's about publicity. It's about the process of getting our consumers or our public to notice who we are as a brand. Where do we stand in this huge set of products that sit on the shelf and for our homemaker to consider? So there are 4 things that we need to look at, which is of interest and which is what is going to make a difference. One, we need to get her to feel something about us. More importantly, we need to do it in a way which is truly memorable. It has to have that stickiness to stay in the mind of the elephant and not fall off like a posted piece of paper. You need to do it again and again and again so it stays in the head. So the case studies I'm going to show you are actually campaigns which I've run with a single-minded idea which is run over a period of time. It is not just a single hit and run expedition. It doesn't work like that. The last piece is you need to do it to a lot of people. Like we said right in the beginning, it's not about just the people who are brand advocates or the people who are brand haters, but that mass of people in between who currently may be considering you, may not consider you. So you need to get them to feel you. You need to get them to feel you in a way that's memorable. You need to do it lots of times, and you need to spread your net as much as possible. So we need people, we need to do communication which triggers some kind of feelings. Now, like I said previously, one of the problems with consumers is they buy brands in the market on the shelf like they were walking zombies. So 90% of the time is just an unconscious pickup from the shelf. Even though they might say that, we look at things very carefully and it's a considered decision, so on and so forth. Research says that most of the time, 95% of the time, it's unconscious decision making, unless it's something of very high value. So, there are some things that we can trigger off, and today, marketing, communication, getting into the mind of the consumer has got a lot more sophisticated. Now, one of the pieces of research which is available says that about communication which is emotional uh, triggers of triggers of a better, let's say, connection with brands, triggers of more positive memories of the brand, and this is what makes brands stand out. So they're saying emotional advertising works far better than rational work. One chemical which they say actually works in the favor of this is dopamine. So dopamine is what which triggers feelings. Now, we are all humans, and one of the things which drive us is what comes from the heart, right? And uh, so brands which get people to care, they work very successfully. Brands which make people cry or laugh, they work very successfully. I've got a copy here. This is for Guinness beer, but so if you don't have a problem, I'll just pay this piece. So this is a brand which is a 100-year-old beer brand out of Ireland, and this piece of copy just evokes. It doesn't talk about the brand till right at the end, but evokes that feeling of empathy for this guy, which is incredible.
Dedication, loyalty,
Doing better at this, yeah. Next week, buddy.
friendship. The choices we make reveal the true nature of our character.
So that's a piece of communication which is very unusual in a category, but really triggers an emotion in your head when you realize that the entire set of his friends are not handicapped, but they are playing on wheelchairs because he's one guy who's handicapped. So they want him to be part of the group. They are, how do you make people marvel at something? Communication which is larger than life. I mean, this is another incredible piece, but I won't take you through this copy. But so what triggers off your feelings is what gets you to have an affection and a connection with the brand. Communication can make you laugh, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, it doesn't have to be serious Procterian. Put one spoon of detergent in your laundry, and your laundry is going to be sparkling white. I mean, how boring is that? Check this piece from Snickers. Again, built on an amazing insight, and it has worked in lots of markets around the world.
Mike, come on! Mike, what's your deal, man?
Come on, man. You've been riding me all day.
Mike, you're playing like Betty White out there.
That's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby!
Whoa.
Eat a Snickers. Better?
Better. I'm all bet! That hurt.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
All right. So, in terms of what triggers our feelings or what makes dopamine work and what gets brands noticed is about two big aspects. One about moving people, the other one is about entertainment. How can we in our communication, how can we as a brand own something which makes people care for us, or makes us cry, or makes us laugh, or makes us marvel? This is what triggers feelings. This is what gets brands connected with consumers and keeps it in their heads and does not make it an automatic, just an unconscious decision, but a conscious decision to buy it next time. At the end of the day, if you have to incite feelings, there's nothing better than a great story. And stories are what builds blocks of human thought. They are the way the brain organizes its thinking, and stories is what stays in your head. And there are stories which were told to you when you were young, as you grew up, etc. They are the ones which stays in your head, and that's why having a great story triggers dopamine and keeps you stay connected. It's like story of Snickers, everyday stories where you're part of the pack, but when you're hungry, you get crazy and you have a Snickers and you're then part of the pack again. Uh, Coke is open a bottle of Coke and then you can unlock an entire, let's say, feeling of happiness. And this is such a powerful thought that Coke has taken over a long period of time. I'm going to just show you just an actual piece of work they did in the US, which is incredible. And that just builds so much on that Coke open happiness. Check this one out. So that was an amazing execution done by Coke. I mean, this was done in many markets. One of the markets in the Middle East where they actually did this was in Egypt. So imagine the shock and surprise. You're in college and you put in the cash, and out comes not just one Coke but multiple Cokes. So amazing. So it is the trigger for happiness. Beautifully done. So stories is what stays in people's minds, and stories contain unforgettable characters, and that's what it's all about, right? I mean, so plots are one part, but stories keeps you connected with brands. So a great story which connects with the interests of the consumers, their inclinations, their passions, their concerns, etc. Amazing. Those are the brands which are probably the most successful in the world. Here's another piece of work which is very, very touching. Uh, Let me display that for you. Again, we're talking about dopamine and how it incites feelings in consumers.
Dreams are like angels, they keep at bay. Love is the light skin, darkness away. I'm so in love with you. Make love your goal. The power of love, a force from above, cleaning my soul. Flying my desire, love with tongues of fire, purge the soul, make love make love your goal.
So I'm sure you're familiar with John Lewis, and this is a commercial for them. Beautiful. It's the snowman's journey to get a set of clothes for his partner who has nothing when the copy started. Copy went really, really viral. Amazing work by this brand. Uh, Many of you must have seen E.T. So apparently, when Spielberg wanted to do this movie, one of the things he wanted to start off with, what was the end point that he wanted to get? He wanted to make people happy. The feel good factor was, let's say, the starting point of the story, and then he worked backwards. And that's what they say is the myth around this. And then he developed the entire process to build the film around it. So that's it. I mean, so that's important. Stories need to cover topics that interest people. They need hero stories. They need stories that address their concerns. They need stories of borrowed memories, of things of interest, their pain and their pleasures. Stories which provide a moral. I mean, you get a lot of this on social media today, but yeah, it works beautifully. And always there's this whole piece about purpose versus just having the need to sell a product. And I think one guy who has actually made a huge difference on this front is Paul Pullman from Unilever. So he's been a very strong advocate on having brands with purpose. So one of the things he said, at the end of the day, our brands need to grow, but we think it's very important that the brands have what we call the social mission. And we see consumers asking for this. So brands with a strong social mission will be brands that are more successful in the long term. Millennials today, very strongly pivoting towards brands which have a strong social purpose. You have no reason to exist if you don't have a social purpose. So Uh, I think Unilever has done a fantastic job, and they continue to do a great job. Here is a very quirky copy on Lipton tea, which also highlights the do-good factor uh, of the brand.
Why can't everyone just be more tea? Excuse us. Watch it. Nice. Wow. One step at a time. Everybody's talking. I don't care what you say. Only echoes of my mind.
Lipton, be more tea.
Disney's Muppets Most Wanted.
So, a very left of field way to kind of get people to realize that, why not people be more tea versus, just those aggressive people running on the street. So, like we said, we need to incite feelings. We need to get people to connect with emotions around the brand. The second piece is we need to do it in a very memorable way. So the first part, incite feelings, works beautifully because you trigger dopamine. There's a second neurochemical, and that's called oxytocin. So this is a chemical which creates feeling of empathy, creates feeling of trust, and it works at a very subconscious level. And when you trigger this off, there's a sense of familiarity and ritual. You don't want to walk into a room full of strangers. You definitely want to connect with somebody that you recollect, have some familiarity with. And that's what oxytocin does beautifully. It creates memory structures that achieve this for our brands. We generate more positive feelings and a better chance of our brand getting recognized and being top of mind. So at the end of the day, we reached a stage where we are called. We've come literally because of social and everything else that's happening around us. Our memory is pretty short, so we need shortcuts to get into the brain and to create that distinct connection with who we are as a brand and what we stand for. Now, the golden arches is something which McDonald's has worked so much on. It's there in every piece of communication. If you go back to the historical work, they've actually done work on getting that golden arches stuck in your brain in terms of what it stands for. Some other brands have done it fantastically well with shapes. For example, Heinz Ketchup, which is this unique bottle with this very unique label shape, which has consistently remained part of the brand for a very long time. HP sauce, again, another very unique piece. This character, so has been very, very strongly associated with Coke. So every year, Coke has a copy around Christmas, which works beautifully around this whole thing about open a celebration. Our very famous Apple logo, it's so distinctive, and it's been, it has made such a huge impact in keeping the brand top of mind. A font. Google has done such an incredible job in using their font and the entire typography and the visual imagery around their fonts to keep the brand top of mind. Mars, it could be a pack that could work. A ritual, have a break, have a Kit Kat. Yeah, so that works so beautifully. So this baby character, I don't know if you've seen the commercials around Evian. So this is this amazing Swiss water owned by a French company, Danone. So they created this character, this baby character, and he has a whole set of, let's say, twins, and they are skating and dancing and whatever, all because of the power of that amazing water. Very memorable. Impossible is nothing. Adidas, killer line, unforgettable. So the best to use in the category is something which is unique to the category. Again, it's not easy to do something unique, but if you do find something unique, own it. Something which has a high association with the brand. I think Apple has done an incredible job on the brand on that front. prompts the brand, keeps it top of mind, etc. And you need to do this by building it over a period of time. One amazing statement from Mr. Apple. So he said, you need to invest $100 million over 10 years to ensure that the brand stays in your head and is remains stuck in your head. A lot of people don't think or invest in such a long-term association, but that's what you need to keep the brand in the head and not lose it. This is a classic. I mean, Coke has done an incredible job over a period of time. Their hourglass bottle, 1915 all the way till 2007, they haven't lost this. This is so central to the brand, and this is what makes it so automatically familiar, so automatically recognizable, and you just unconsciously go and grab it. So the third piece of the puzzle is we need to do this lots of times, and that's the whole piece. So you get the right feelings, positive, etc. You create a memorable device which helps the brand stay in your head, and you need to keep hammering this over a long period of time. Because one of the problems which we face as marketeers or as advertising specialists is the fact that 80% of the time people forget brands. So they need to be constantly recruited. We are in that leaky bucket situation. You need to constantly remind them that, hey, I exist. I exist because I offer you this. I exist because you feel good when you're with me, etc. So we need to keep doing this again and again and again so that your people who are almost forgetting you come back and find a reason to stay with you. You need a big idea. So whether it's the Coke bottle of happiness or any other successful campaigns, and you need to extend it over every single contact opportunity you have with your consumer. You need to look at a media strategy which is not just, as they say, on and off, but something which happens continuously, which happens day in, small breaks, comes back again, etc., and keeps reminding the people of you as a brand. Every time you walk into the store, Mars has done a super job with their merchandise. McDonald's has done an amazing job with their toys. So Disney has done an incredible job again with their merchandise. So every time you walk into the store, you're hit with these loving characters, and you keep remembering Eminem. Eminem has done such an amazing piece of work with their collection. Through formats, Maltesers, incredible. Heinz, I mean, what's baked beans? I mean, it's on the pack. You can't forget it. That pack is iconic. Use the pack to communicate who you are and what you stand for. Primark, fast fashion. They've created this trend, and they are maximizing it. Snickers has done some amazing job with their packaging again. Limited edition, more nuts. Coke has done an incredible job. I don't know if you guys have seen the one where you could actually imprint your name on the can, etc. So the relationship you get with the brand is so awesome. And you need to do this to a lot of people. If you remember in one of the previous slides, which I had shared with you, you got the brand lovers, you got the brand haters, and then you have that entire set of people in between who may care about you, may not care about you, may have no interest, may have some interest. Those are the people you need to get on board. So you need to get your loyalists on board, and you need to get a huge mass of people who are sitting on the fence or just vacillating to get you on board. So we need to remember that our audience is very different from the cast that we show on our commercials or on our TV copies, etc. Classics like the Marlboro Cowboy, which has lasted for generations, 50 odd years, they flogged it. But the cowboy is not the smoker of today, is totally different personality. The gorilla, which actually made such a huge impact on the Cadbury copy, is not necessarily your actual chocolate eaters. But so you need to reach out to your audience and get them to connect with you. Your snowman is not your audience versus your gift buyers who are. So it's a game which you need to continuously keep doing all the time. One simple and cost-effective way of doing maximum publicity is actually looking at taking an idea and getting free PR to build this and create all the noise around it. And this is what makes campaigns successful, gets people to talk about it, gets people to reshare it. And that's what is responsible for the success of a lot of campaigns today. Some of them I'll actually take you through on the next part of the presentation. So to kind of recap from a publicist and an advertiser's toolkit for brand development, what are the 4 things I need to do? I need to get people to have positive, negative, not negative, but positive, emotional feelings about the brand. We need to do it in a memorable way. It needs to be memory devices which stay in the head. We need to do it lots of times, and we need to do it across lots of people. So this is one part of the presentation. I'll now take you to another part of the presentation, which has some of the case studies. So just bear with me for a sec, please. I'll get to that in a moment. So that's my second bit of okay, so this has got some, can you see my new screen, please? Cross-cultural marketing campaigns. Usman, if you can just give me a heads up on this.
Yes, we can see.
All right, thank you. So Snickers, you saw the ad already. Now this was based on an insight which traveled across countries, was done over a period of 5 years. So that's the power of an idea, which is then taken and stretched over a period of time. So what are the challenges? The challenge was Snicker was losing its brand value. They saw a decline in 2009 of 3.6%. So brand value decline, as Usman had said right in the beginning, is what people don't want to have, right? I mean, so you are paying for the brand, and that's what the business is all about. So BBDO was set, they had a challenge to create a campaign that could unite people or that could unite markets under an idea which would ensure that consumers want more of the world's famous chocolate. And the insight on which this was based on was the fact that when you're hungry, you're irritable, you're cranky, and you're just not yourself. And this is a reality. So they used this insight. They used celebrities from around the world. They used local humor, and then they got this entire thing working. So let me show you the campaign. This has got parts. You saw the ad in the first part. So this has got other markets where they tried it out. And it's got a quick summary of what the impact was in reality. Here it is.
Super Bowl commercial. It was like the hottest commercial. Here, take a look. Snickers commercial, and suddenly the rejuvenation of Betty White.
Whoever's doing their ads for Snickers, very, very brilliant. This is the new Snickers ad. Yay, Betty!
Okay, which one of you losers nicked my deodorant?
Who'd want to smell like you?
Who would smell like you?
Brilliant. Witty.
Zip it, Shrimpy. You know, you're bad at football, but at least you're short.
Whoa! Dan, eat a Snickers.
Why?
Because you turn into a right diva when you're hungry. Better?
Better. You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers. Get some nuts.
Unbelievable. Me subbed for Gary No-Go.
Ulan. Hadi gönder abi gönder. Abi iyi misin?
Ne oldu tutamadın mı Tüylübam ya?
Kime diyorsun sen? Bana mı saldırmışsın sen?
Çıkınca hemen az soliste bağlıyor abi.
Mikrofona konuş.
Tamam.
Tamam. Mert al abi bir Snickers ye. İyi misin abi?
Çok iyi geldim.
Abi başlayacağım taşınmanızdan ya. Ha düşün.
Açken sen değilsin. Snickers. Açlığını yok. That hurt.
So, incredible story, amazing insight, and that created a storm. So, if you noticed, I mean, it was just not the paid media that they invested in, but the fact that it got mentioned in all different chat shows. They got mentioned in lots of free visibility on lots of channels. They got consumers actually doing it. So if you saw in the end, that was that videos done by people in GCC, including Saudi. So 58 countries ran this in total. They had a 10% market share increase across Asian markets, which actually drove growth 2 times globally. In terms of brand value, they had a growth of 17%, which is close to 4 times the stated goal. They had planned to do 3.7%. I mean, their plan was to at least cover where they were, but they did even better. Here's another beautiful one, Barbie. I mean, Barbie is one of the most vilified toys in the world, especially in the recent past, because all the negativities around it. So Barbie had this entire negative perception amongst both parents of young girls, and they said that they impact the career goals of girls. So Barbie was always considered to be, you just have to look pretty like a Barbie. You don't need to have brains, and that was one of the biggest challenges for the brand. So they had 3 years sales decline. So they wanted to say girls could, and that was the insight they actually built a copy around. They wanted to demonstrate that young girls today have a mind of their own, and they could become anything they wanted. And Barbie could become the trigger for their imagination. So unlike what they did in the past, where Barbie was the centerpiece of the copy, they used the girl to tell the message. So, and it was not about makeup or hair or et cetera. It was something completely different. So watch the copy. It's incredible in terms of communicating this very powerful idea of how girls could do whatever or could be whatever they wish, and Barbie just helps them do it.
Hello, my name is Gwyneth, and I'll be your professor today. Good morning, everyone. I'm your new coach. My name is Maddie. Nice to meet you. I had the most fantastic day in the office. We got that new business I wanted. Peter, the Triceratops, is 1 year old. The T-Rex, Sally, is 1,02,252 years old. Knees up like a unicorn. Higher, higher. We can think and do lots of stuff with our brain. Now, does anybody know how big the brain is? Anybody? Sophia. It is medium. Medium? Very good.
And what are the results of doing this? 50 million plus views on YouTube. A copy which triggered a lot of pass-through value. 13% increase in sales. 81% positive brand sentiment. So a brand which was actually going in a 3-year decline just changed its life with a piece of work which said, Barbie is just triggering your imagination to do something amazing with your life. The girls decide what they want. So last case study, Procter & Gamble, the absolute epitome of rational advertising. Every Procter copy is about, that's your piece of laundry, it's not as white. This is the other piece of laundry, which is also not white, but when it goes into Ariel, it comes sparkling white. So that's been Procter's route, and they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars to get the ideas through in people's head of how their products are more effective than competition. So for a change, and it's an incredible effort by Procter, driven by their agency, and they did this over a period of 4 years. They said, let's use the Olympics, the 2012 Olympics, as an opportunity to kind of celebrate the person who makes the most important difference in any athlete's life, and that's the mother. So they wanted to tell consumers that, we are not just producing Tide and Crest and Bounty, we also recognize the person who's responsible for caring for their families, for creating that amazing athlete who today goes out and wins. Check the campaign. It is so awe-inspiring. And this piece of work has traveled and worked in different markets across the world.
Time to get up, baby.
Come on. O que é?
Que eu vou fazer um café da manhã gostoso pra você.
there were 34 participating brands of P&G, so they had practically every single brand they had as part of the repertoire of brands. So they did multiple copies. What you saw now is essentially a set of ads that have been plugged together. 17 million hits plus globally on YouTube. I'm sure this was just one part. There must have been a lot more than this. More importantly, in the US, they got 200 million plus in terms of sales. So they had planned 100 million and they ended up with 200 million plus. Incredible results. I think this was such a departure from what Procter usually does. The brand suddenly had such a human face. The company had such a human face. It was just amazing. So that kind of summarizes three short case studies on the whole piece. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And
that was great, Mr. Joy. I mean, it was really insightful and also entertaining. And people must be feeling hungry after seeing all those stickers ads. Mr. Joy, there are some questions from our participants.
Yeah.
One is an interesting one. See, most of the ads shown are fantastic. I mean, actually, the Barbie's turnaround you showed is mind-blowing. The creativity there is supreme. Isn't it, end of the day, all about finding a great ad agency and let them creatively think for you? Or is there some more to it?
Well, I've been on both sides, and I spent the majority of my life, I did close to about 17, 18 years in advertising. So between two of the best agencies in the world, I had an opportunity to work with Leo Burnett and an opportunity to work with BVideo. Now, so advertising is a painful business because every time you're stuck with the same thing. You're given a brief and you want to find out what is it that you can do to trigger that empathy, which will trigger consumers to love you. This is not easy. Whether we like it or not, this is not easy. So what do people do? Most of the time, and I've also done this myself, is you do advertising which shows the product in all its glory, which ticks off the box with the brand owner. Some of this advertising that you see, imagine the Snickers ad. How many brand owners would turn around and say, let's do it? There's a guy who goes and jumps on an old woman or a diva or whatever. So it takes a lot of courage. So most of the time, it's the brand owner needs to step up and say, okay, I'm going to do something really crazy and out of the box. So it's not an easy journey. The other piece is you need to find something which can get that empathy point with your consumer. Every time I see that Barbie copy, it just gets a lump in my throat. I see that Procter copy, it just makes you feel so good. But how many times do you get that opportunity? It's not very easy. So it takes some time, it takes journey, it takes time for the agency to understand the brand, to understand what are the drivers around the brand, what is it that consumers connect with the brand, what can you do to get those consumers empathize with you, and then you can then probably find a human story there which you can present to consumers. A lot of times brands do shortcuts, which is, say, I am better than, or I clean whiter than, or I, can deliver, let's say, whatever better. I can do better than you. But, this falls after a while. So it's great to have a good agency because a good agency has the experience in the background, but it's also important for the brand owner to stay connected with the brand, with its people, with its consumers, have some solid insights into what makes it work, and then work along with the agency. Give it some freedom to work. Most of the time, brand owners don't allow the agencies also to work with certain amount of freedom. So it's a two-way journey. Trust, experience, belief in competence, all of these things come into play. But yeah, it's a great when you hit it. Oof, You're laughing all the way to the bank.
Thank you, Mr. Joy. And there's another question from Wajira. If consumers' mind can open and store the name, essence, logo, values, and etc., and make sure that the consumers capture the last experience of the purchase. I mean, let's say the aftertaste of a toothpaste, the product, the quality, smell, and so on. You still think we have to spend a lot of money on spending? I mean, it's a typical finance guy asking this.
Absolutely. And Wajira, you have absolutely no choice. One of the pieces of research tell you that 95% of shopping is unconscious. So you have a brand with X amount of consumers, but I could be a competitive brand who could walk by tomorrow and say, I want to grab that set of consumers, which is currently owned by a brand which does not do anything to reinforce that relationship. You lost your consumers. And like I said, it's like a leaky bucket. If you don't keep filling the bucket, you're going to end up with nothing. It is, you just lose them over a period of time. So it's not the taste or whatever. And then you need to go back and start the nostalgia campaign to get people to feel nostalgic about that great taste or that great flavor or whatever. That's a tough battle. When you had the opportunity, you need to keep reinforcing. You need to be active. You need to keep people connected with the business. This is an unending story. You cannot, you cannot stop investing behind the brand. You need to continue doing it. There are two classic cases where brand owners have become faces of brand. One amazing guy is, of course, a guy of Apple, Steve Jobs. So he personified the brand, and he did such an amazing job of it. So when Steve came, it was like the avatar of innovation, etc., talking about it. In current times, you got Elon Musk. So Musk does such an incredible job to front Tesla. Amazing. So Musk today has got a very valuable company. Does not produce cars in terms of the numbers he's supposed to deliver, but the brand value is incredible. So you need to continuously keep doing things to keep the brand in the consumer's head.
Thank you, Mr. Joy. I hope that answered Vajira's question. And there's one more based on a very recent experience. You pointed out that as a part of brand development, as a long-term strategy, you have to repeatedly advertise, and you need to make sure that you get into the customer's mind. There's a typical example in case of Saudi. I mean, Amazon acquired Souk very recently, and bombarding us with advertisements on YouTube. And certain point, you tend to think that this is really annoying. And in today's day and age, people just use their cursor to fast forward and skip the ads and move on. Is this really working? How do we gauge the success of these advertisements?
On YouTube, you have a format which is unclickable. So if your ad is under 5 seconds, you can't click that through. These guys are investing so much money, and they are literally wallpapering. So this is like a traffic blocker. You can't do anything. You can't skip that ad. And they're very smart. It's a very simple brown box, which is their delivery box, with a smile and the logo. That's it. So they are imprinting Amazon into your head. They're currently doing an amazing campaign on they were the first actually to trigger off a National Day campaign, 10 to 70% off. Those guys are in the game long term. They are the godfathers in the business. They know how to do this better than anybody else. So whether you like it, you hate it, you don't like them, they will get into your head. They are going to push all the rest of them out. So competition like Noon, etc., is going to be really facing a lot of trouble as they go forward.
Also, Mr. Joy, I think for me personally, out of all the points you touched today, you mentioned something about social purpose. I think that is if you ask me one key takeaway from today's session, I would say that particular word. Any brand should have a social purpose, especially the millennials and Generation Z is looking into what brands are doing beyond just delivering what they want to them personally. Now, if you take big brands like IKEA and their product, the nature of their product helps to market themselves as socially concerned and socially responsible brand, like, you know, they're into forestry management and etc. How can brands, I mean, which are not in that nature, which don't fall into that category, market themselves as socially responsible?
A very good issue and a very good question. See, one of the problems is every brand has to find a story around it. Now, if you look at the, let's say, one of the most polluting businesses today, and there's a lot of noise around it, is the, let's say, the meat business. Now, the meat business has been vilified a lot for creating the most amount of carbon emissions. They have the worst carbon footprint in the world. The amount of water consumed and wasted is so high to grow a kg of meat. But if you go to the US, for example, I mean, companies like Tyson have invested a lot in terms of recycling the water, recycling the waste. They've found ways to, let's say, green the environment. So there are lots of stories they have found to counter this entire negativity around you are one of the biggest polluters today. Another category which is a big polluter is fashion. Nobody thinks about textile as a polluter. But if you look at it today, fast fashion, where people buy clothes, wear it once, and then they throw it out, this has become a trend. Imagine the amount of textile which gets wasted. This is not recycled, but today a lot of companies actually repurpose all this used fabric and reuse it for their creating fresh clothing. Paper, another huge polluter. Cotton manufacturers today, there's actually one in Saudi which claims that 70% of its stock is recycled stock and not virgin paper. So every single company will need to find a way to, what is it that I'm doing to ensure that I'm doing good for the planet? There's no choice. There is absolutely no choice today for brands to say, I am not doing anything wrong. There's always something you're doing wrong. Your trucks are polluting the street. And there's always a way around it. Walmart, for example, which is, less of a grocery, more of a logistic company, they have converted all their trucks into CNG trucks. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this. So their carbon footprint has reduced substantially by doing this. So a lot of people find ways and means to create an impact and deliver a better tomorrow for people.
Thank you, Mr. Joy. That was very insightful and very interesting. I think when we start talking about big brands and what they do in the marketplace, I mean, we can talk for hours and hours. It's really an interesting subject. It was really useful. I'm pretty sure that it must have changed the thought process of the participants. Personally, it did for me. And I'm sure that, especially for the finance professionals who think in a different way, I mean, you have imparted certain things, I'm sure that they will start thinking differently. Thank you, Mr. Joy, for your insightful session. I hope that for sure in future, we will have to have one or two more sessions on this particular topic, because it's very interesting and it's very difficult to cover. It's such a vast subject. And on that note, I would like to call one of our members, Gayan Jayasekara, for the closing remarks. Gayan?
Thank you very much, Usman. Really appreciated you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Good evening to all. I deem it is great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks in our second webinar. Today's event is very special because Mr. Joy Abraham, General Manager Marketing of Tanmiah Food Group, accepted our kind invitation to enlighten us on the importance of brand development. Let me thank you on behalf of our members for allocating your precious time for us and for your valuable inputs on brand development. On behalf of the KSA chapter, I would like to thank all the participants from the overseas chapter, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and also from Sri Lanka. I also would like to thank our colleagues from Riyadh and Dammam, CA members, as well as others. A very big and heartfelt thank you to our participants from other professional bodies, accounting as well as non-accounting professionals from Jeddah. You all have been supporting us and encouraging us from the day one this chapter was inaugurated. We truly value your support. Moreover, I express my heartfelt thanks to our moderator, our friend Mr. Usman Hikmat, and the organizing committee headed by Mr. Nanda Seneviratne and well supported by Mr. Vajira Premaratne and Mr. Sashni Nazi, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to organize this webinar. Finally, yet importantly, I thank you, my friends, the members of CASL KSA chapter, attend this webinar and the support you provided to the organization committee so far. Once again, I thank you all for your participation. Thank you very much. And you can take over, Usman.
Thank you everyone for participating in today's session. Hope we will meet soon again in another session organized by CA Sri Lanka KSA Western Region chapter. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.